Welcome to the Power of Play in partnership with Ethereum Sports, where sport is more than just a game, it's a force for change. I am your host, David, and in this podcast, we explore on how businesses and organizations use sports to achieve positive social and environmental impact, and how the sporting industry itself can become a frontrunner in social, environmental, and economic sustainability. I'm thrilled to welcome my guest today, Robbert De Kock, former president of World Federation of the Sporting Good Industry and president of Swiss Badminton. Robbert, welcome.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you so much.
Well, Robbert, just to start off, can you share a bit about your journey? It has been a quite long one in the sport industry, and what led you to where you are today?
That is indeed effectively a long one. Yes, well, thank you very much for the question. I've been, I would say, my lifelong active in the sporting goods industry. During my studies, I was already working in a sporting goods store, helping out and trying to put the ends together. And pretty soon after that, actually, I became more active within that field. But I've always combined two things, actually, and that is sport, myself as an athlete and as a professional athlete, and working for the sporting goods industries to my best abilities. And as you can imagine, depending on which level you are within the certain areas, if it is on the badminton athlete side, you're mostly a little bit younger. And if you come to the executive levels of companies, then you probably have to stop or to tune down, I would say, your sport activities. So it was always an interesting balancing act of getting the best of both worlds, where nowadays I'm actually still doing the best out of both worlds, but I actually moved over more to the sporting goods administration or sports administration, sorry, not sporting goods, but sports administration. And in this case, particularly in the badminton sport. But yeah, so that has been actually always part of my life. I've been working for the International Olympic Committee for 4 years. I then worked nearly 14 years for Intersport International in different functions in product areas, but I was in the last 6 years the vice president of the organizations, handling license, global development, and new business. And after a short sabbatical, I was then actually asked to lead the World Federation of the Sporting Goods Industry in the beginning as the Secretary General. And in 2017, I actually combined the role as being the president and the CEO of the organization. So in a total of 16 years until that journey ended in October 23. Whereafter I actually moved over to the sports administration part and more on a voluntary based business.
Oh, that's an amazing career, and I really envy you that you really stick to sports after finishing your active career and manage to stay around this amazing industry, which I think always a passion project for, especially if you were an athlete, you always carry it with you.
Yes, for sure.
And talking of passion, what does the term sport for good mean to you? It became a quite popular word in terminology. What does it mean to you?
Well, we had, and it's interesting that you took sport for good, because there's a couple of, I would say, slogans in that area, and there's actually a couple of initiatives that were created during I would say the last 20 years or 25 years, I would say. Some of them were initiated outside of the sporting goods industry, but needed the sporting goods industry basically to function properly. And this whole sport for good became, in the meantime, and I started this at the WFSGI. By the way, the WFSGI is the abbreviation of the World Federation of the Sporting Goods Industry. So I will use this abbreviation a couple of times within the discussion to avoid this long word of the organization. I remember that Mr. Bach said, when you change the abbreviations, I will take you as an IOC member. So I never did that, but it was quite funny that he said that. So sport for good, I would say, has several meanings. I mean, and until today, the WFSGI on the sporting goods side, in this case, I would say rather the commercial side, has been doing a lot of things for that. We have on one side, I would say the social part of it, the social obligations, meaning helping regions, helping athletes, helping national Olympic committees, helping national sports federations who are mostly in defavorized countries, which do not have maybe an infrastructure as we know them from the Western world, and who do not have the money necessarily to pay for it. Where we're trying to help these people basically to be able to do sport and to be active. This idea started, well, we already were active always with this since the last 25 years. We gave it a little bit more structure at the WFSGI. The new structure started in 2016, where we laid out a new principle and where we started to help, I would say, in a much more organized way, where previously there was a lot of spontaneous support activities, where today it's quite a solid support program with the IOC, by the way, with the WHO, and where we support national Olympic committees and athletes. So that's actually the athlete that we're aiming for, without asking anything in return. So it is also free of charge. The only obligation is that during the Olympic Games, for example, they wear those products. But we have also had activities where we shipped products to refugee camps, where basically also, again, people in, I would say, in difficult situations, because let's be honest, refugee camps is not really a joy to stay there. And therefore it is for us, an important element where we can help and provide footballs, volleyballs. I would say the type of products that you need, which are simple on one side and where people in groups can have fun. And that is quite important, because you want to get these people out of their misery by having this short moment or this nice moment of doing sport. So that's one element of it all. The other elements obviously are a little bit more complicated, because they are related, if you talk about social and environmental issues, they are related to manufacturing and the way how you manufacture and what you do for it. But in general, I would say sport is positive, sport is contributing, and sport has a message to give, where athletes are seen as heroes for many young people. And I think that's actually where I see sport for good is doing a very good, I would say, is a good message, but is also a good activity that has been developed by the industry towards the world.
I love the summarized version of it. And that's, I think, a tribute to your years spent in sport, because wouldn't be able to round it up in a better way. Do you have a personal story or experience that inspires you to use sports to achieve a positive impact in either way?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and I would say the personal impact, personal experience is related obviously to my professional activities that I had. I mean, and I was still at the moment I remain a little bit more on the World Federation of the Sporting Goods Industry side, and maybe later in this discussion we can talk about the sports administrative side. Although sometimes it intertwines, because obviously there is no sport without sporting goods, and there's no sporting goods without sport. So that's also an interesting saying for our situation. But I've had very positive experiences also from the support of athletes. The fact that you're able to provide athletes who are, and I'm coming back to my previous comments, coming from a defavorized country, and you're able to help them, provide them with footwear, with apparel, with products where these athletes never had this, what I would say, high quality. He's been growing up in, I would say, very modest conditions, and then you see I would say the respect, their big thank you, their appreciation that they're giving just for this simple gesture of giving a couple of products to such a person. So those are I would say, very emotional moments, I would nearly say, because they really hug you. They are so happy with that. Um, so that those are positive signs. But we also work very hard, for example, and that's something when we speak. That is my successor, Emma Zwiebler, who basically took over my role at the World Federation of the Sporting Goods Industry. And she, at the moment, is now working very hard on the development of physical activity worldwide. And here we use, of course, organizations like the World Health Organization, the UNESCO. And this is a hard nut to crack, but because every time we think we can make the difference and we can help society, and we are in a good way, but it's a very tough one because I would say as a counterpart, you have the electronic business, in this case, all our kids who are on their phones and on their, then you have the social media part that is, so the motivation for kids to play outside, which was in my age normal, in my young age, I played outside every day. Rain, no rain, snow, no snow, doesn't matter. I was outside, playing outside, and most of the time playing football. So we have, I would say, a lot of situations now where we need to get to this positive impact through the promotion of sport, being in contact with top athletes who can provide the message, who can help us with the message, but it's also governments. So is that a personal experience? No, but I've seen it as a personal experience to be able to, how can I contribute and in which way we can contribute, or which dots can we put together to make it a success. And the last one is actually the exercise that my successor Emma has taken over, and I would nearly say, or not nearly, I can say, accelerate it enormously because the industry wanted to support, move forward on this issue clearly. And that's actually taking place. And those are what I would say positive momentums because, and positive moments. And I still see it as positive because I was the initiator also behind physical activity. And you see it now, I would say, going to a level which goes far beyond my wildest dreams that I could ever imagine that it would be taking this impact. Unfortunately, the results can only be measured in 5 to 10 years time from now. So it's now an investment to make. And here you see all kind of experiences which are nice. If it is from very young children being in groups activities where you're having a laugh most of the time how they do their sports, until I would say the elderly people who could not move before. And I give you the example of the electro bikes. Yeah, could not move before, but the electro bikes has brought them again a new mobility possibility, and they are biking because they have, of course, an assistance, and they feel comfortable and are outside again, and they start to relive again.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's a little bit the personal experience where I'm saying I've had all these people where I talk to, where you have seen it happen, and where you see it now grow further beyond where I've been taking it, and that's always the goal of an organization, and that's a very pleasant and satisfying feeling that things
You did something good.
yes, and that's something good happened. So and it's still taking place, so that's good.
Absolutely. You mentioned actually, because your roles have been throughout sports on all facets, basically. And my next question is such a question on how these things cross. You have worked across both the sporting goods industry and the governing side of sports. How do you see these two worlds intersecting when it comes to impact and sustainability?
Okay. As I said to you before, there's no sports without sporting goods, and there's no sporting goods without sport. So how you turn it and how you want it, and even if you're angry or you're not angry, or you're happy or you're not happy, if you want to be in athletics, you need shoes and you need your gear, and we supply it. And if you like it or not, and you can then probably choose between one of the brands, but you need products. You cannot go barefoot or naked. So and in every sport we have this, what I would call marriage, where we belong together. So that also means that if you talk about sustainability, if you talk about environmental or social impact, we stick to this together. Where I think the industry has been far ahead compared to the federations, at least on the environmental level and social impact level, where the federations are maybe further is on the whole ethical part, and I would say the new trend around promotion of female participation on administration level, where the acceptance of the different I would say visions and views and feelings are being put together. If somebody is a transgender person, if somebody is a lesbian or a homosexual person, or if somebody is a female, where it used to be a very male-driven organizations. I think the sports administration has moved over already to quite balanced and acceptance of all, I would say, views, if I may call it like that, where the sporting goods industry is still a very strong male-driven environment. Not that they don't want it, because they are very open, but I mean, it needs just more time to get that impact going, actually. And that's so from that perspective, there's different speeds on different things, I would say, between the organizations. But together, I would say they're very strong because the sporting goods industry will make sure that the products delivered will be compliant to certain minimum guarantees of requirements. And think here about there are, of course, standards that are out there. And is it from United Nations? Is it from the ILO? Is it on social part? We are following a minimum those. What you see is that, of course, major brands in the sporting goods industry, and you talk here about Nikes, Adidas, Pumas, New Balance, Asics, Mizuno, Under Armour, Pentland Group, these guys want to be ahead of the game. These guys want to be better than the others, and they want to make a difference, not only for themselves, but also for their companies and their status in the companies. Most of them are stock market companies, and through a sustainable index, they can show basically that they're doing good for the business, good for the world, and with that, the higher they are on the sustainable index, the better their stock values are. So it's a survey.
Mutual benefit, basically.
Absolutely, it's actually a win-win situation. The more they invest, the more actually they get out of it, and that's the interesting part. And some of them do this with a very strong belief in certain directions. If you take a brand like Patagonia, I mean, which is very strong oriented around environmental also in addition. And it's a very particular concept. I mean, it's a concept that they developed. They've been a leader in this and been a leader ever since, I would say, in that part. And I would say if that is the conviction of the company, do you have to do so much? I don't know. I mean, I think there's always the balance that you have to find. But for them, it was their unique selling point. It was their USP that they saw as important. A, there was the conviction, and B, it became their USP for people to buy Patagonia products because they were environmental friendly and social compliant in many ways. So
although their advert said "Don't buy this jacket."
Yeah.
I don't know whether you remember that campaign.
Yes. But and here you come also through, I would say, the most strange situations, to be very frank with you, and we've lived through it. I mean, we had to deal with NGOs in the past. I mean, some of them, I would say, more, I would say, the Swiss attitude, where they're open for discussion and negotiation and understanding the complexity where an industry may be in, but we have a pathway of moving forward. And others who are simply, I would say, very bold, have no respect for anything, or just want to hammer down an industry and want to get their organizations financed because they are the best and the strongest, and they're hammering on everything. So it's sometimes also interesting to see that the NGOs is also a business, and it's supported through finances. And the more they shout, the better they get finances, or at least that used to be like this. It has changed a little bit. But you see nowadays also that there's fantastic collaborations between many of them and the industry.
Absolutely.
Because by working together, we can have I would say a plan, because you can't change from one day to the other. And then I give you the small anecdote, which was quite funny, because if you have then, and I will not name the organization also to not expose them unnecessarily, but a very big worldwide NGO who is wearing these, I would say, waterproof, I would say, clothing, which we use on high sea,
Yes.
the yellow.
I have a thought which one you're talking about.
Very good. So, and that organization is wearing them themselves, although these products, of course, are far by environmental friendly, because they are made out of. But the problem is you can't get a watertight product without chemicals nowadays that are maybe not the best ones, but at least, so you need to make a choice. What do you want? I mean, and we do not have yet the technologies where these kind of products could have been made at that time when we discussed about it. Maybe it's changed today, but where that could be avoided. So it was quite funny to see that people are complaining, and then you see what they're wearing. You say, why are you wearing that if you're so convinced that it's not good? So,
given your experience, what are some of the most exciting innovations happening in sustainable sports equipment and apparel today, in your view?
Okay. So on the sporting goods side, there's a couple of things. What is sustainable? Eh? So that definition first has to be made. Eh? So I mean, that's we start already with the complexity there, because if we talk about environment, I mean, social is something where the definitions are easier to make and where you can find an easier consensus. If you start talking about environmental, it becomes extremely complicated, and it's so complicated that even the world leaders cannot find a common denominator. Or do not want to find a common denominator. So we are entering, I would say, the most difficult discussion of what is. If you talk about sustainability, I think there should be an interest to see that products are made under fair conditions, that products are produced out of materials, that are, I would say, having a certain requirement when it comes to sustainability, meaning the chemicals which are either reduced, either not even present in the products, that there is maybe a way how to recycle it properly, etc. So there's an end of life this possibility. Now here you come already with the first complexity. Yeah, we talk sometimes end to end. Yeah? So from the beginning, that means until the end of a product. And what happens then with the end of the product? Now we start already with an inequality worldwide, because certain countries in the Western world have recycling ovens, others do not. Others have systems to separate apparel, textiles from all other waste products, others do not. And depending where you are, obviously, these situations are causing, I would say, a bigger or smaller environmental impact. If you see sometimes these mountains of waste in certain African countries, if I may say it, or even South American countries, because there's no ovens to recycle that properly, then that's already a big challenge how to do that. Then you have, of course, the responsibility of these companies and of the companies. I'm not sure if that's familiar, but to you it is, but maybe not to the viewers of this of the podcast. In Switzerland, we have a tax on electronics, and it's a tax. Basically, it's a recycling tax. It's actually money that is collected to finance a recycling of electronic products. So it's also requested that the electronic products in Switzerland, you bring it back to a central point and it will be recycled, and you've paid for that. And depending where it are, you pay 1 or 2 Swiss francs. It equals a little bit more than $1 for this. And that obviously contributes a little bit also to a certain recycling, or in this case of electronic products. Now, how do we do it with apparel? How do we do it with footwear? I can tell you that some of the big brands have been trying with footwear to do a recycling and to recollect the shoes and then try to recycle the shoes. The problem and the not success behind that is simply the complexity and logistics that are behind there. That basically this whole exercise became nearly more expensive than the cost of the shoe. And that's where you are then coming also again into a complexity of the cost on one side, the recycling cost on the other side, and is it worth that? Yeah. Now, other models that could be that we can think about, and what about these normal recycling methods? So that is definitely a complexity. The industry nowadays, I think, is working very hard on products that are able to be recycled, but you need also for this the necessary situations, ovens or whatever, to be able to generate and to use that and to do that. It doesn't make sense if we say, let's put that waste into a big boat, let's sail it to Africa, dig a big hole and throw it in there, which we call sometimes the landfills, where the fast fashion industry is often being confronted with. So that's then, I would say, the complexity behind it. But the industry definitely is very conscious about that situation, is trying to produce already products that have a very high degree of recycling. Is it everywhere? No, it's not everywhere. But it's definitely, I would say, in an increased level. I mean, if you go from the painting on a bicycle, it doesn't have the chemicals anymore that it used to have 20 years ago, etc. So, and every part of our industry has been trying to evolve significantly in the last couple of years. Is it enough? No, it's not enough. But you know what? It sometimes cannot go faster because there are no alternatives to certain products. And then to say, and that's then something where the world becomes a little bit imbalanced. There's then groups who say, yeah, but I mean, let's keep that product. The product has to be last for 10 years. How to do that? How can I make sure that David has a shoe that lasts 10 years? And actually, Robbert has also a shoe, the same shoe, but Robbert is doing twice the activities of David, and I need to have this shoe last for 10 years. This is the simple wording, obviously, but I mean, we have different use, different people, different weight, different environmental situations, climate situations, etc., that influence the longevity of a product. Yeah, and those kind of things are then hard to influence. And then the other element of it is, if you have, well, no, let's put it differently. Why are you wearing that shirt you're wearing now? Most likely you went to the store, you said, I like that shirt and I want that shirt, and you buy that shirt. You wear that shirt, yeah? And most likely, if the store where you went has next month a new type of shirt, you say, maybe I'd like that too. Maybe I want that too. So we have this economic situation around the people who get motivated by publicities, colors, materials, technologies, depending what kind of product it is, and they want to have a new one. Yeah. Why do I buy a new car every 4 years or 5 years? Yeah. Why am I not continuing? The car can last probably for 20 years. Yeah. No, because the mind says, hey, let's get something new. So, and here you come into this other, I would say, conflict situation between, yes, it would be logic if we would keep products longer. No, it's actually boring, because we like the new things all the time. It's a new motivation, it's a new energy, and thirdly, and that's not the unimportant one, it's helping to the economy, because we have bills to pay, our countries have taxes to raise, and if a company makes turnover, then there's taxes to get, and if the taxes are not paid, we have to get the money from somewhere. And where do we get it from? And who is going to pay then the bill if we are going to reduce the speed of consumption by half?
Well, I mean, there you are at my favorite topic, which is sustainable growth, which is for me a false economic concept. There is nothing like a continuous supply going or demand going up all the time. For me, you have to see also that, because that causes the problem. So the concept of sustainable growth is for me the core of the entire problem. I discussed this several times in my university studies, where I was almost kicked out because I confronted the professor on this topic, that I'm sorry, there is nothing like that, but that's, I can falsify numbers, yes, to pretend that there is growth. I can create program product life cycles, which is basically cheating on your consumers, and but ultimately, yes. But what I understand, basically what you were saying in regards to the focus areas of innovation are around the recycling approaches and the new materials.
I would say definitely it is actually the combination of both. I think the companies in the past were producing the best and the most beautiful product. And nowadays the companies are producing with a complete other attitude. Yes, it needs to be nice looking. Yes, it needs to be good, but we also have in mind the recycling, the use of which materials, the use of the colors, the use of the type of product, etc., etc. So it is, sorry, type of material, I want to say. So it is really a development process nowadays, which has much more, I would say, background, and the task of designers is not anymore build me the most beautiful product. I mean, build me a product that I can have efficiency, that I can have recycling opportunities, that I can have materials that are, I would say, compliant to today's regulations. And I think that's actually much more what's happening.
We often hear about the concept of circular economy principles in sports. Do you think the industry is moving fast enough forward, recyclable and sustainable, in regards to recyclable and sustainable materials?
Well, and I'm coming back to my previous comment here. I mean, even if the industry would be fast enough, it's not the industry that has to be fast enough. It's the countries that have to be fast enough. It has the countries that needs the last piece of the exercise, because that is the, let's say, the waste management. Yeah. And the waste management in each country. Why do I have countries where I have to separate metal from carton, from normal waste, from food waste? And I have at my home 4 bags of different things which I have to throw into. Yeah. Now, I'll be very honest with you. In the first years that happened in my country, I started to ask, okay, but how is it then happening on the backside? Oh no, everything goes together again. So, that's not very good, I said. That's not really the goal. The goal is that I work a lot to separate everything, that you are also taking care of it and use it separately. So we can think about all the models and we can be as fast as we can. But if we do not resolve that problem that we just discussed about, but how is it recycled, and how is a country helping to collect the waste materials? What do they do with it? Are they separating it? Is it separated before? We're not finding the ideal solution of circular economy. I mean, and that goes for, excuse me to say it, not just for our industry. What do we do with electric cars? Sorry, I will not go into the discussion, but the batteries of the electric cars, well, good luck with that one in 20 years. It will be our biggest environmental problem that we have created, because there is the recycling possibilities that do exist are costing so much money to do the exercise, and we have so little capacity on the number of batteries that we are producing nowadays for our different needs, including the electric car industry, is that we will run into a serious problem. So therefore the question is, it's not, because the principle of electric cars remains a very interesting one, or better to say a CO neutral vehicle, in this case particular, and the same goes for our products. But if in the end of life there's no solution how to recycle that properly and how to get this back into, I would say, a neutral system, is it to be recycling of the materials? If it is recycling of the liquids that are there, or whatever it is. And that thing has to be solved maybe by an industry. I know that the automotive industry is setting up, of course, or there's factories that are set up to do this. But is now every industry going to be responsible for their own waste? Is that the future? Or do we have another form? So I think these ones are still, I would say, a little bit undefined at the moment in society. There's not yet, I would say, a clear. We are already one step further on the sign. If you notice maybe the recycling signs on different products.
Yeah.
You know that every European country has another sign. And do you know that every country has actually normally a payment system where companies are contributing? But the funny thing is, if you do it in Germany, you thought you can do it so you have paid for everything. But it's not. Every country has a different one. So we start already with the complexity of understanding what that sign means and how it's used. And can we get a united signature for it, and what to do with it properly? And. So there's so much things in our society that are still unknown, which includes also the sporting goods industry situation. So even how clever I think I am, how clever I think I can do things, how sustainable I can produce, all good and fine. But is that last end? Yeah. Is that organized?
And this brings me to a $1 million question. Can you share an example of a brand? Because I think there is little to no brand that you would not know that successfully integrated sustainability into its core business strategy, or what is the pinnacle what you see on the market?
Okay. In the meantime, I'm happy to say, and I'm pleased to say, I think also that all major brands has put a major effort in being sustainable. Is it in their products? Is it in their household? Is it in their own transportation models? Is it in their whole office situations? So I would say that all the major companies that I know of, they are active in this field and they're working hard to get this field going. The ones who have the most challenges are the smaller ones. And the reason is simple. Sustainability costs money. Yeah. It doesn't cost money to travel with an electric car or to go by train or those kind. That's not an extra money. But if you want to make, I would say, reasonable, sustainable, I would say, projects, it costs money. And that's where the smaller companies have difficulties, and that's where smaller companies are struggling basically to survive. They're happy already that in the end of the year there's a black figure coming up on the screen, and that's then where but you see also successful ones. So I mean, I do not want to generate that, but I mean, all the big players are putting a lot of effort behind it, and they mostly have also a little bit more reserve to invest in it, and they see it also as an obligation to invest in it.
I was recently spoken to a company there called Valor. I think I mentioned them to you, and they are a Dutch company, and I think they are the ones for me where I saw really exactly what you just described, that they have their natural products and then they are shifting from those because they have to guarantee some sort of revenue stream that keeps the lights on, and then are transitioning basically smoothly over into the fully circular economy type of products, which I think they're doing an amazing job. It's also something that is a niche. The directions towards where these brands are being pushed generates new markets. And these new markets are for those small entrants who find these niches and are set up this way from start already. Some of the big ones campaigns are from Nike, the Move to Zero. Then their campaign called Grind, where they use scraps, but it's new markets and new revenue streams as well, and of course additional costs on having integrated this new approach into their business.
And I think out of your words, I think the following we can say to this, and that's where the future has to go. Today. The Nikes and Adidases, you gave a couple of examples of their I would say their campaigns that they're having around it. In the future, I don't, at the moment, obviously, those campaigns are marketing. They try to tell you, hey, listen, this is great. I'm doing my best and I'm working hard to get this as sustainable as possible. And for me, the future is not an if. The future is it must be part of our DNA and our normal production. There's not even, you don't even have to think about if you buy a product that it is I would say manufactured under, I would say, decent conditions and environmental friendly product materials and those kind of things. I mean, it should be obvious that it is like that.
For that, you have the new ecosystems, because let's say whilst Adidas did their things by themselves, and this is also one of the key trends for this year is partnerships. Adidas partnered with Parley for the Ocean. That's a very successful collaboration where Adidas is leveraging ocean plastic to create its products. And this should be the focus, that these several knowledge and experiences come together and become a well-oiled machinery, which is then considered to be natural.
Yes, and I agree to that. And here I come then a little bit to the negatives behind it. And it doesn't matter if this is the sporting goods industry or any other industry.
Yeah.
At the moment, everything around sustainability is seen as a marketing tool to basically sell more and to make sure that others sell less. So, because let's be very honest, fantastic initiative from Adidas and fantastic initiative that Nike has and Puma has and all of them have, I would say, individual initiatives. And why do they not have a common initiative? It's very simple. If they have a common initiative, they are not coming out of the mess. By having their own initiatives, they can say, this is me doing this. And Nike says, oh, and I'm doing this. And Puma says, I'm doing this. Great. I mean, all good things, by the way, fantastic. Absolutely. Yeah, but not doing it together, they would lose completely their marketing tools to be able to say to the consumer, "Hey, I'm the best. No, I'm the best. No, I'm the best." You know, or we all do the good thing, and it's actually just, I would say, bringing the message in a way where they say, "Okay, we have this space of having a collaboration with organization A, B, C." Because they do environmental activities and we think we should collaborate with them. But the collaboration on a global scale with all the industry joining together on this, that's I would say at the moment, I would say an impossible task for the time being. And either the knives are on their throats by their governments that they impose this, but otherwise, because I said before, there is a sustainable index and you can be number 1, 2, 3, and 4. And these guys want to be number 1. What do you do to be number 1? You have to be by yourself. You have to be the best. And you want to show the world and also these people who are influencing these index that you are the best. So, and that's then where your stock market values are also influenced in a positive way. So we have here the combination of what I would say responsibility, and economics. Because the company has to sustain. I mean, the company has to continue and make profit.
And talking of numbers, the sustainable sportswear market is, I think, to be valued around 4 billion in 2030, around 2030. And so it's a huge market there, which everybody is trying also to grasp, because 39% of customers are willing to pay a premium on something that has a sustainability factor. And that's all, again, a new market that evolves. And that's where the 4 billion comes from. But and everybody is now fighting with their own weapons to get hold of that share.
But okay, but I mean, first of all, I don't think it is 39% of the consumers is willing to pay more for a premium product. Yes, but not necessarily a product that is sustainable. So, I mean, the consumer will look at the product because it's a premium product, but I mean, not with the necessity to have necessarily all the compliance on sustainability, because there only probably 5-6% are looking more into the detail. Where is it produced? How is it produced? Who is producing this? And
Looking at the holistic term
Exactly.
sustainability. Okay.
And that will reflect also a little bit what you're saying, because the turnover of the industry globally at the moment surpasses 500 billion. So 4 billion could be, it's just a tiny, sorry to say, it's still a very tiny part of the business.
Absolutely.
And therefore we have to be very honest. It has to become our standard responsibility. It has to go in this direction, and it will go in this direction. But again, it doesn't make sense to go faster than the world goes, because we still have so much challenges also in, I mean, why is our, and this is then what I find unbelievable, why can't, if it is so important, why can't our ministers responsible, head of states, find an agreement where they all agree to a certain level? Yes, they have the Paris Agreement, and yes, they want to do reduction of CO2. Yeah. But here I come, and I think we discussed this also once already, to the difference between environmental and climate. Yeah. So climate change, and it's a fact that it's happening, so not this discussion. But everything what has to do with CO2, the world has, I would say, an auto-generating system. Yeah, it is, everything in the air is auto-generated, and clear how much we put in and how much we can resolve through our, I would say, trees and green that we have around the world. But it is auto-generating. Everything I put in the earth or take out of the earth, that's my worry. That's my major worry. And the major worry is because it can't be recuperated. It can't be changed. Where if I have an ozone that was open and now it's closed because it auto-generates. And we have an automatic. Now, am I happy that I'm walking in a city and I'm not completely exhausted by gas? I was in another country close to the beginning of Asia, and I was walking through that city, which I will not name to be polite. And I was thinking, Jesus, man, the number of gas of the cars, because they are driving in older cars. But I was not used to it anymore. And you know what? Probably it is a fraction of the level that we would have in Europe from the past. But it was bothering me already. So I'm very happy with certain CO2 neutral products on one side. I'm just extremely worried about the rest that comes afterwards, and that's the whole environmental part. And so why should we be fast, or better to say, does it make sense? And that's then the question, or better to say, that's the big question. Should we be faster than what the world is? Because even if I make those products, on the end of life, it will happen exactly the same as happens now. If the countries do not set up a solid recycling format or system, or if this is privately done or government controlled, we're nowhere. We're nowhere with everything you and me and the rest of the world can think about on end of land or cradle to cradle. And that's where, and they say, okay, how to do this properly.
And this takes me to the next question, which is around measuring this impact is always really tricky. So everybody is trying to use, ESG standards are the most common ones now. What do you think are the best ways for brands to quantify and communicate their sustainability efforts?
That I think before you said a $1 million question.
This is the 1 billion one.
It is the 1 billion one, yes. No, I guess the industry has been trying to see if we can come up with a common denominator, and interestingly enough, governments has forbidden this because it was seen as possible unlawful competition, or better to say, the bigger ones could play their bigger form out, and the smaller ones couldn't even pay the possibilities of getting there. They had a system, and also here I will not name it just to avoid that we are getting a negative discussion, because I think here we have an interest, and they have an interest, and the industry has an interest to get a positive impact and how to do this properly. So I think it is very difficult to have a one shoe fits all here. You have different kind of products and different needs, how to produce this. I mean, if we only talk about apparel, you can make a discussion around only apparel, but footwear already has a complete other components included, has complete other needs. Then you have, I would say, all the technical products. If you have carbon products like a tennis racket or a ski or a hardware product, it's of course having a different component. I mean, if you have the bicycle we talked before, which is most of the time for the top bicycles, also carbon components in some form, some facet, Kevlar, carbon, or whatever. And they all have different recycling possibilities. Now, some of them are much easier. A bicycle, for example, the recycling of a bicycle is actually pretty easy, very easy, yeah, compared to some other products. Why? Because if you have a carbon bicycle, well, you take out all the components, you have just a frame and the fork left, which are mostly of carbon components, and carbon can be recycled, yeah. Now, I can tell you honestly that all the recycling bicycles that we have gathered in Europe, and there's a factory in Germany that does carbon recycling. Everything that we have for 1 year that is gathered in Europe to be recycled is a half day of work for that factory.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's peanuts. Yeah, so from that perspective, and this is particularly carbon only. Yeah? So I mean, but here comes the thing. And then I said, what happens then? I mean, they're reproducing carbon. But it cannot be used for this and that. It cannot be used in an airplane, cannot be reused for a bicycle, most likely also because the quality is losing out towards the original carbon materials that were used. So you can have I would call second degree product made out of carbon, or better to say, not the product is second degree, but it has a product that can integrate carbon out of a second degree material quality. And you cannot produce a bicycle anymore with that material. So that's then the other thought you need to have when you start doing those kind of things. So can I make a recommendation, one shoe fits all? No, but I mean, first of all, you have some basic standards like chemicals. So there is the list of restricted substances existing. That's for the sporting goods. It was actually developed on the apparel side. In the meantime, it is apparel, but also hardware that you can basically use this for. So if you are compliant with that, well, you have done already a first step, I would say, of sustainability. The rest, of course, there's a lot of sustainability that belongs also to your behavior as a company. I mean, what do you do? How are you traveling? How often do you travel? Can you reduce your travels, and how much can you reduce your travels? How much can be done by teams discussions or not? Do you have to go to Asia? And we have, of course, if you are a European-based organization or an American-based organization, I would say a large portion of our production is done in Asia. We talk about big manufacturing countries, if this is China, if this is Vietnam, if this is Bangladesh, if this is Indonesia, who are producing a lot of our products, if this is in the footwear or apparel business or wherever. Sorry, forget also Pakistan and India. And then we have some closer apparel manufacturing in Turkey or in Portugal or in the Northern African countries. But so how far do you have to go? How often do you have to go? Where do you have to produce? What makes sense? Do you have products that you want to have your stock low, but you want very quick reassortment? Then you probably choose something in Turkey or in Portugal or in Northern Africa, because for the European distance, that's obviously very close to home, and you can reduce your stock. But you're going to increase your shipping, and shipping maybe by airplane. So can you do other plannings? So it's quite a complex issue to say you can get one shoe fits all. I think the essential, and that's the essential, what you need to have as a company. If you believe in sustainability, if you believe in sustainable, your company and your products being sustainable, then that's what you need to work on. And you will see within that framework, and that needs probably an individual analyze, what you can do to improve, what you can do to make it better, what you can do to make sure that your product, you have done the maximum effort. But let's be very frank, some things are inevitable. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I still need to get that container from Asia to Europe, or from Asia to the US, or from Asia to wherever. Yeah. And it still is, and our transportation methods on sea are not necessarily environmental friendly. We use crude oil. Now they are also smartly thinking. If you talk to the big shipping companies, they're thinking already, okay, we're going to change these boats. We're going to make them gas, and which is natural gas, and that's already much better than crude oil, of course. So they're also working on solutions. So let's say from all angles, and then it's a question, do you as a company have a chance to work with already a transportation company that has already modified their fleet, or is already working on I would say on gas if it comes to long transportations. But then also you think about using, and you see that already in very many of the big cities happening, that the inner cities are not accessible anymore for trucks, but only for electric vehicles. Hey, I mean, so there's so many things and elements where you can think about besides the product, yeah, because the carbon footprint is measured from the beginning of the production of your product, or better to say, even the production of your raw materials, yeah, or even if it is having a natural a product, a natural material, even from the land where it was produced or how it was produced, until it had a prefabrication of a material, then it is shipped to the factory. So you need to have an understanding also, and that I think is another important message, of your supply chain. Know your supply chain. You can't work on a sustainable model if you do not know your supply chain. And here I found out in the past that many of these manufacturers or brands, excuse me, did not know their supply chain. Yes, they knew where they bought their ski jacket, or where they were produced, or where their tracksuits came from, or where the shoe was made. Okay, but hang on, mate. Where does the material come from? What are the chemicals from? How are they produced? How are they shipped? Yeah. If you then imagine that some of these products were, the raw materials were made in Europe, shipped to Asia, produced there, shipped back to Europe. Yeah. And here we had a very interesting discussion with the WTO, the World Trade Organization. Yeah. And this was actually around, where is it manufactured? Because we are sometimes charged from a tax perspective. Yeah. And we had then a project manufactured around the world, because the raw materials came from BASF in Germany. It was shipped to China. The apparel materials were made in Taiwan or Japan or Switzerland, and were shipped then also to China. Actually, what China only did was reassembling it into one product, and then it was sent out. So where was it manufactured? Now, we know that it was assembled in China, but was it manufactured in China? So we came to a very complex, I would say, situation and understanding of what to do. Coming back to the essential of your question, there is no one shoe fits all, but know your supply chain. Then you can see if that supply chain fits you and suits you when it comes to your sustainable objectives. Then you can choose the materials with the same challenge, because where is it made, how is it made, how is it shipped, where is it shipped to, which way is it produced, and how I'm going to get it from the moment I have control over it to the stores, etc. And all these elements play an important role when it comes to the decision of how you want to do sustainability. But sustainability is in your head. You have to live it. You have to want it. You have to be convinced of it. And you have to know that you have to do the best within that framework that you can do within your company. Because I can tell you all the models, but if you say, shit, but I don't have the money for this and I don't have the money for that, hey, end of discussion.
Are there any specific metrics that you suggest companies to use?
No, and there are metrics, and again, there's the parameters that you want to put into it. So I mean, it all belongs to this. So there's some standards, but as I said, there are some discussions around the standards, because unfortunately, and coming back to my remarks in the beginning, On environmental, we do not have an agreement worldwide on
What it
standards.
means.
Yeah, so what it means. So and how it should be measured and what should be done. Because and I know why, because certain countries will be going massively wrong and other countries will be massively right. And is that good or bad? I don't know. Because I mean we're happy that they are producing and they are happy that they're producing, but and they're working on solutions to do it better and to become better, but it doesn't go from overnight, you know. I mean, those kind of things. So there is a lot of, I would say, tools out there, and those tools are, I would say, either by I would say recognized big organizations that do this for you, that help you, that analyze you in all the different facets, and that can go into every element of your company. But again, David, you need the money to do that, huh? And you need that money that is just not. We only now talk about the reporting, and the first part we talked about is the effort and the conviction that you want to do something. But then you're going to put numbers on it. Eh? Oh, this, yeah, that's a cool thing. Okay, hang on, that costs you 100,000 more per year. Oh shit. Okay, thank you. And the next one, that costs you also 50,000 more. And the next one, okay, hang on, my profit was only 250,000. There goes my profit. That cannot do. So it is, and that's where I
It's
say
balancing also of your valuation again
absolutely.
on how your sustainability index varies and how much profit you make. You need to create this balance, as I understand, right?
And not to forget, because certain of these companies are existing because there's investors, there's private equity, there's stock market situations, and everybody wants something back out of it. Because I'm not sure about your situation, but I do have a little bit of money on the stock market, and then I'm always happy when I have some profit. And yeah. And on the other side, I'm actually working about sustainability, and I'm thinking about it, and how can I do better, and how can I be nicer, and
Yeah.
more environmental friendly, where even myself, I'm definitely not the best, but at least I'm thinking about it if I can improve and where I can improve. And then I'm thinking, oh, hang on, but on the other side, on the backside, I'm pushing so much these companies to come with their best profits, because if they have the best profit, I get the best dividend, and then I'm a happy guy. So, so it's actually an awkward world
Yeah.
where it's on one side we go left, and on the other side we expect right to get the maximum outcome. And hang on, these are not compatible. So I have a problem. So I think that's a little bit where each company has to decide a little bit. And again, I'm coming back to the essential. Believe in it, do to your maximum, see that you can manage it, and it should be standard in your programs. It shouldn't be. And at the moment, if you have something unique, sell it, bring it out. I mean, the Nikes and Adidas do it through their big programs. If you're smaller, bring it out, show it to the world, because at the moment, these are factors where you sell a product on. So you get the combination of doing something good towards creating a turnover by bringing a good message. But in principle, you need to believe in it.
Absolutely.
This is something where many people in the world are not yet on that level. And to finish that off, and then I think we're getting to a closure, is if you ask on the street somebody who bought a jacket, a winter jacket of 50 euros, and you're going to tell this person, did you know that this is produced under, I would say, indecent working conditions? I would say that you will most likely, and I've seen it happen in Germany because I'm giving you now a real example, that these people are saying, excuse me, sir, sorry, I cannot be bothered, because you know what? It's cold weather here in Germany. I do not have a jacket, and I'm happy I can afford a jacket that can protect me against the cold, and I pay only 50 euros for it. And you know what, sir? I do not have more money to spend, because at the end of the month, my account is on -10 and not on 0, but on -10. So I have to make sure that I spend my money wisely, and I'm happy that this jacket is for sale for me, even if this is a supermarket. But and this is the answers you will
That's
get.
the brutal reality of life. Yeah.
That's the brute reality of life, exactly. And this is where I'm saying we are trying to do a lot of good things, but many people are also happy that they find sometimes a product simply because they can afford it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A dear friend of mine from the football industry hijacked a bit of this podcast and requested me to ask you 3 questions.
Okay.
The one of them being, do pro sports teams and competition like Champions League make people buy sport gear? And if yes, how much of an impact do they have compared to other motivations that people might have for their consumption behaviors?
Okay. I would say it's maybe not the events, but rather the athletes that would accelerate the sales of products or motivate the sales of products. And that is because certain of these athletes became heroes. And let's be very honest, if I ask you, can you give me two names out of the football industry, of football athletes?
Pele, Mbappe, then Schweinsteiger, Müller.
Yeah, here you go. So you're a football fan, so you already know many of them. Huh? But if you then also take the Ronaldis and the Messis included, huh? And every small kid would like to be as Ronaldo or Messi or Mbappe or whatever. Yeah. And here you come already to an interesting element because Mbappe, of course, has a very French influence, most likely. Yeah. Where Ronaldo and Messi nowadays have a global influence. I mean, because they became global stars. They are at the end of their career. But I mean, so I would say it's rather the athletes than the event that creates that. But obviously, again, and here I'm coming back to there's no sport without athletes, and there's no athletes without sport, and there's no sporting goods without athletes, and there's no athletes without sporting goods. So we come a little bit of this intertwining of all these elements of the event organizer on one side, the athletes on the other side, the teams, and the sporting goods industry. But sporting goods industry is mostly using the teams or the athletes for the promotion and not necessarily the event. Yes, there are events where they are partnering with, etc., but their core messages are brought through the athletes most likely, and the teams, excuse me.
Thank you. And the next question is, what is the R&D process for an on-the-surface simple item like a match football? How does it usually work for the manufacturing company? What sort of research goes in? And does it usually involve the actual practitioners at any point?
Okay. A football, obviously, we talk about a product that exists already for many years. And in which, by the way, we also had some serious social compliance issues. In this case, child labor in the mid-90s, which we didn't even know as an industry that was happening. And I'm coming back to my previous remark, knowing your supply chain. And we didn't know, and we reacted at that time. I will not go further in detail, but I can assure you that we have made a significant progress to eliminate child labor issues in our industry, at least. So, and if you want, we can have a separate podcast on this in particular, because it's a very interesting and complicated, and I would say even emotional discussion, because we talk about children that are forced to work. So a football is a product where also here it's quite interesting. You think it's a very easy product because it's just about the ball is round and that's it. You have hand stitched balls, you have machine stitched balls, and you have now also welded balls. So already a lot of, I would say, various production methods, I would say, that are used and that are being done. The balls have inside, they have a bladder, and there's a lot of quality differences in this. Now, FIFA, if you take balls in particular, FIFA has a test procedure to approve the balls. I will go one step further. FIFA even has a test procedure to see that the factories who produce the balls are compliant to a code of conduct. And that's actually the code of conduct that we at the WFSGI have developed and use. And FIFA has adopted our code of conduct for the verification of manufacturers and making sure they are compliant. When they are compliant, they have to send in balls for testing. These balls are sent, they are tested, and they're tested on the minimum quality that FIFA has set to have balls. And they have, of course, different categories. It goes from the match balls and the well, the old classification was FIFA approved, FIFA inspected, and then IMS balls. That has changed in the meantime. but for the simplicity of making a very clear structure. And these products have very clear obligations to be compliant of. Now, what does FIFA do? If everything is tested, they have their test results, and it's quite a thorough test, I would say. I mean, it's a duration test, it has a bouncing test, it has a roundness test, they're quite, and they do this actually in a Swiss company called EMPA, which is a Swiss-based, I would say, technology testing institution, and they use this for this. So once that is done and the factory is able to produce those products according to what they have delivered and FIFA has been in agreement, then obviously these people could start cheating.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily, but I mean, FIFA is buying balls. FIFA is buying. So if you try to cheat on them, I can tell you, they will kick your ass because they buy balls, they test these balls again, and they look into the bladder if it's the same bladder that was delivered to the testing, and because they keep all track on it. So FIFA has, for example, a very sophisticated testing system when it comes to balls, and also a very sophisticated verification system to make sure that it is also in their after production compliant to what they have agreed on. So if you ask in particular for football, there's a very sophisticated model. For other sports, it's less sophisticated, but the manufacturers are mostly the same. So they are used to certain standards and they will continue certain standards because they also know that if they're going to cheat on it, that's not what they aim for.
I think the key question is also around the topic that do the players get to test it? Because I understand that there is some discomfort with the current match balls, which have been raised. And yeah.
So yes, there are athletes involved, but I mean, obviously they come in at a certain stage of the development. And I would say the higher the technology of the product is, the more the athletes is involved. And I'm just sorry to derive a little bit to ski, where the athletes are much more involved in the development of the ski because it's much more technology involved. Yeah.
Well, it's also an individual sport.
Well, it is, but I mean, if you kick that ball has to fly a certain line. That ball has to fly.
Exactly.
We had, for example, the welded ball that was used in 2010 at the World Cup in South Africa for FIFA. When it was a straight shot, it could well be that it was flattering and very difficult for a keeper to hold. Was on one side interesting, but on the other side, it was also not really the way how a normal ball would have take their flight directions. So there is a momentum when obviously there could be some mistakes made or some smaller things that are influencing it. But at that time, as you said it rightly, then there's athletes that are complaining and then they're modifying it and then they come up with a modification of the product very quickly. But normally, I would nearly say that it's in only on a very high level that you may have sometimes a challenge, but it's rarely actually for this particular product. There's other products that are much more complicated than the football.
And the last question before we go back to our original topic, who are the current leaders in sport apparel innovation? Can we talk about a world with long-standing dinosaurs and up-and-coming challengers who want to disrupt markets? Or is it more a case of entrants from new geographical regions who capture a slice of the market from established players?
Okay. The big players are getting bigger for sure. So the Nikes and Adidases, the Pumas are growing steadily and permanently. It will be hard to throw them from their throne that easily. On the other hand, if you look at, you talked about football before, and let's stay a little bit on this topic because that's an interesting one when it comes to other and smaller brands and local brands. Nike and Adidas have sponsored in the past a lot of football clubs, a lot of them. They've sponsored athletes, but they've sponsored also a lot of football clubs. That became less and less and less in the years in the last, I would say, 15 years. And why? Well, it's simple, because the pricing of sponsorship of the big players, Real Madrid, Manchester United, Barcelona, Inter Milan, or Juventus, or whatever, yeah, became more expensive. But and you talk by Real Madrid, Barcelona, you talk about a $1 billion plus deal. I mean, but the return of investment on these big players were significantly higher than if they were sponsoring FC Cologne or Willem II in the Netherlands, yeah, which nobody knows about.
Yeah.
What you saw is that obviously, they play in the highest division in Holland, but I mean, what you saw is then that the big brands have concentrated on the big players because those were global brands. Real Madrid is a global brand. I mean, Barcelona is a global brand. Where you see that they left space for other brands, and think about the Jacco or those kind of brands. Yeah, look about Macron, and they got space basically because the big players actually left out certain of these clubs where they have taken the pieces. Erima, for example, and these are, I would say, were three brands that have grown significantly because they took the space which the big players left, because they said, we're not going to sponsor some of these smaller clubs anymore because we don't want to do this. Now, within that, you see that also local players and local players, I mean, country-wise or regional-wise, has shown up. I mean, you have some in South America, brands that you never heard about here in Europe necessarily, that has developed there locally, because again, the big brands did not take all of these teams, and that's what you then see what's happening. And so that's one element that is possible, but the big players will remain the big players, and for the time being, I see no change in that. What you could see is that certain sport activities, you can see niche products coming up. I mean, you see niche products or something very particular where they're trying to do something. Now, in the apparel business, that is easier, because apparel business is, of course, considered also fashionable. And let's be very honest, today you wear a product from Ralph Lauren on a shirt, and tomorrow say, I'm fed up with this Ralph Lauren. I think Hilfiger is better than that. So, and that's when you change the brand. And these brand loyalties, they are related to images that the brands are created towards you. And that's what we said before also. How much effort do they make to bring you or feel that I'm connected to that brand? And that's what you have also. That's where you have in the apparel business, I would say, a much easier space to fill. What you saw is a certain moment that a lot of beach brands were coming up. I mean, bigger players were maybe O'Neill. They had at that time a turnover of a couple of 100 million already. But then you saw smaller brands coming up like Musto, like Brunotti, who are still today playing a role. But I mean, they do what? They do 20, 30, 40 million turnover. Yeah, that's of course because they were playing into the fashion. They were playing into colors. They were playing into a new trend. They were so. You have certain product categories where it's easier and where it's easier to come in with the brand and a new brand. And then let's be very honest, the first 5 million are easy to reach, maybe the first 10 million, and then it gets a tough job, because then you're getting competition through others. And then either you have a fantastic social media program or an internet sales model with your e-stores that you have, where you can make success. But let's be very honest, sports brands also bring emotions. So you have to be emotionally connected to a consumer to be able to sell, because seldomly that consumer buys only because it's a technical brand that complies to his demands. There's always a emotional connection in our industry that is quite important. So, and once you have that going, I mean, then you have a possibility to make a brand. And let's be very honest, to start a sporting goods brand, the hurdles are very low. You and me can decide here on this call, well, let's start a brand. It's called Daro from David and Rob. So, and then we start off, and I know some retailers, and you know how to produce, and we decide a small collection, and we'll order a couple of shirts, and off we are. So it's and that's how.
Yeah.
That's simple. It's very simple. So that's why I say. But once you go into a ski and you say, let's produce a ski. Oh, hang on. Then we have to look a little bit further. Then we find a good
Technology.
technology, exactly, and who we're going to sell it to, and how can I get to the athletes? And because there's no ski selling without an athlete using it, and so and that's then a little bit where I think we need to understand where do you want to enter, and but there's possibilities. I mean, there's always, let's be very honest, and then I'm finishing off this discussion on it, but there's always surprising brands. There's a couple of them, of course. There's I will not name it, but there's a UK fitness brand who came up very fast and does now, I think it's over 2 billion in the meantime in less than 10 years. Yeah. I mean, that's fantastic growth. If you take other brands, an American brand, Under Armour in this case, I will name him. He grew in the last, well, he was founded 25 years ago. Yeah. Does 6 billion turnover. Yeah. I mean, these are success stories, I would say, in an industry. But you know what? To win now 1 billion more, that's a hell of an effort he has to make. And if you then say that Nike does over 40 billion, and Adidas does over 25 billion, then obviously with their 6 billion, it's still a small player, if you may say so, to be very honest. So and that growth of 1 billion, that's a huge effort they need to make, but possible. But I mean, but yeah, you need a little bit that luck to have those guys in 25 years. But the Swiss brand On is also such a success number. I mean, there's a Swiss brand, a shoe brand,
coming from a small market.
Yes, absolutely.
Global expansion, absolutely.
So good, yes.
Somehow going back to our original topic of sport, and now focusing more on the sport side than on the good side, and the sport for good. Swiss badminton has a great opportunity to influence young players and communities. What role do you see badminton playing in social impact initiatives such as youth engagement or accessibility programs?
Okay. And I will change my hat as the president of Swiss Badminton, but as you know already, and maybe the viewers of the podcast do not, but I'm also involved in the board of Badminton Europe and in the board of Badminton World Federation, and vice president of the French-speaking badminton countries. So I'm quite involved, I would say, in the sports administration, in this case, particularly in badminton. That said, your question is an interesting one. I wonder if the example, again, the federation can make an impact. Our impact is partly there, but it's restricted. But I will come to this. The impact remains that the athlete has the biggest impact, to my point of view. But I give you the idea of what we did, for example, and in this case, particular Swiss Badminton did. We had a program that we developed, and which was also supported by the Swiss government, or better to say, the Department of Sport, which is in Switzerland called BASPO. It was Super Girls. It was basically a program that we developed for integration, and integration of girls, I would say, from immigrant background, with an immigrant background, and most of the time even with a background where girls and females are not necessarily being seen as being an athlete at all. I mean, certain religions have more difficulties to be or to get activities going with females than others, and it was our goal actually to basically integrate them into sport, and in this case we used the sport of badminton in Switzerland to develop that program called Supergirls. So Now, do we make an impact on that? It's limited. Let's be very honest. I mean, first of all, Switzerland. I mean, we we have less inhabitants than I think the smallest big city in some of the global countries. So our impact is limited. And the other impact where it's limited is that badminton as a popularity sport in Switzerland is obviously not on the highest degree there.
But we look
So.
at everything in relation, right?
Well, and I will bring it then to the relation where we are on the winning edge, and that's obviously if I go to world level, because Badminton World Federation, or better to say, in Southeast Asia, badminton is seen as the number 1, 2, or 3 sport in most of the Southeast Asian countries. And if you see there then what the impact is in badminton on society, there we have a serious impact. Now the impact starts already that I'm having it badminton televised 4 times a week. Yeah. So sorry to say it, this is a little bit like our football or ice hockey in Switzerland. Yeah. And there I see badminton 4 times a week on television. Some countries it's even more than that because they use all the activities worldwide and the world tour that is broadcasted permanently in. So if you talk then where the sport has an impact or in which case, then there we do have a strong impact. And some of these countries, obviously, and here you come to the difficulties where in Europe we can't get females moving in certain religions, with certain religions. In Indonesia, for example, also a Muslim country, man, badminton is so popular also under the females, and that it is it's fantastic. So I think the most important part is that you want to make sure that you can contribute to society, and you want to make sure that these people have an access to sport. And here comes the thing. Yes, I'm a badminton man, but no, I'm a sportsman, and better to say I'm a person who would like to see everybody having the right to do sport. And I think that's an important thing to think about. And therefore, Swiss badminton has a impact. But you know what? With Swiss badminton, Swiss volley, Swiss ski, Swiss ice hockey, Swiss swimming, we all do our part. And with that, Swiss Olympic on top, we have, I would say, an impact on our society that we think we should have, where we can say people should have a right to sport. And you know what? We are the ones that like to motivate you to come. And then, of course, some would like to play badminton, other go swimming, the next one goes skiing, and the third one goes play ice hockey. Yeah. And do the ice hockey and the skiers have maybe some more advantages? Yes, because why? I just won 13 medals at the World Championship skiing. Yeah. I didn't won one yet. Didn't won one medal at the World Championships yet with badminton, Swiss badminton. Yeah. But so those things make also an impact actually, and which sport therefore has also the better place to be. But for me, that's irrelevant. I mean, I think we have a role to play in society, and we all have our small part to contribute.
Yeah, I think also at federations, as a non-profit, the work is to be done not just in sport, but in the occupation and responsibility goes outside of the sports, and have an impact on society to be active, to move and find their joy in sports and promote sport in general, or an active lifestyle.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, first of all, we have, of course, also a certain basic organization to take care of. So it means Swiss badminton, for example, if we stay on that level, because that's where I probably have the most know-how, but it works in all federations similar. We have a competition to manage. I mean, we have tournaments to manage. We have so there's some basic activities where a federation is responsible to make sure that it all works and it all functions and it all fits in the calendar, and it all fits with the organization committees or organizations if not done by ourselves, etc., etc. So there's it's forming trainers, it's setting the rules of the games. So there's some basic elements that federations have as a duty. Yeah, and then you have besides that the whole development of the sport. How can you roll it out, and where can you work with schools, and where can you work with volunteers and etc. to promote it?
You know, many sports federations struggle with funding and sponsorship. And do you see sustainability and impact-focused sponsorship as a growing opportunity for federations to like Swiss badminton itself to capitalize on that?
Okay. I'll be very frank with you. Sponsorship within sports federations becomes more and more a challenge. And the reason for this is Swiss badminton or Swiss ski or does not have the product. It is the athlete that is the product, and the athlete has. So to capitalize on a federation is limited. Yes, we do have sponsors, but we mostly have then sponsors that are coming out of our environment, meaning there's a couple of badminton brands or badminton specific brands, and one of them is Yonex, which is quite a famous one. The second one is Victor, is a other famous one. So they have an interest in badminton. So automatically they will associate to a badminton federation. But to get then an external sponsor is not so easy. And sometimes, and I give you one example, we have a sponsorship, but it's ending with Visana, a insurance company, health insurance company. And then you get people who are calling to our consumer protection and say, yes, but Visana calls me because Swiss Badminton gave the address, and as I'm a badminton player, and I don't want to deal with that, and I think that should not be allowed. Now, okay, fine, somebody calls, and I'm losing now 40,000 Swiss francs a year because a badminton player called the consumer protection that the data cannot be used in this way, although this person could have said, thank you, I'm not interested. That would have been enough also. So we also sometimes limited by laws or by regulations or by where sometimes I cannot have them sponsoring me. And but sponsorship nowadays is a challenge, is a real challenge. And I tell you why, because the possibilities for the brands who used to use sport for sponsorship have changed. I mean, nowadays with social media and all the, I would say, data that is collected through our use of our e-tailing platforms, use of running apps or activity apps, etc., are giving these brands the possibility to talk directly to David and Robert. And they know exactly who is David, and they know exactly who is Robert, and they know that I'm a badminton fan, and they know that I'm looking badminton, and they're playing badminton. So you know what? I'm going to push you information or publicity with badminton and promotions of badminton and whatever it is. Why would they pay a federation a big chunk of money if they can use that same money for a direct consumer activity? And that is actually where sponsorships have changed significantly in the last, I would say, 10 years, where before that it was much more easy. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you see that many federations, and we are in one building in Ittigen in Switzerland for Swiss badminton, where it is called the House of Sports. All the federations are in there, including Swiss Olympic. And then you see the limited impact that sponsorship has. And even take Swiss Olympic. I mean, out of $100 million budget, I mean, not even 5% is out of sponsorship money. The rest of the money comes from either government support, either Swiss Lotto. Yeah. So it is not so easy anymore as it used to be 20 years ago, where there was much more interest for brands to use the sport as a vehicle. And yes, it's still used, but it is used in a different way. The level of sponsorship money is less, etc. So it's not easy. And if you then talk about sustainability combined to that, well, I hope, and this is then the discussion that we may have, that Yonex is working in a sustainable manner. So I can already have sponsors that are sustainable. And for example, yes, they were part of our sponsor, in this case in particular, is Decathlon nowadays. And yes, they were part of our Supergirls program, for example. And yes, they are part of our sponsoring program for other smaller projects that we have in similar ways. And if you talk about, in this case, particular about that company, Decathlon, I mean, they are, in my point of view, even some of the leaders when it comes to sustainability.
Absolutely.
really active, and I would say they're even better than many of the big brands that I know. So that said, that's actually where it stops for a federation when it comes to external involvement of companies in sustainability, where you can think yourself around sustainability. And here I'm coming back to the same level which I said to you before for the sporting goods industry, is, do I need this board meeting in Bern every time, 6 times a year, or could I do 3 times in Bern and 3 times virtual? Yeah. But with the virtual, I avoid that 8 people are traveling to Bern from wherever we come from the country, and if it is by train or any other form. But I mean, it's definitely more sustainable to do this through a video conference than it is through coming to Bern. So there's those kind of things which you can do to reduce, I would say, your impact in society. Could you do other things? Yes, but with the sport, there are limitations. I mean, we can use the carton cups instead of plastic cups, yeah, and those kind of things, and you can reduce the plastics within the events that you organize, or reduce at least the use of plastics in the events that you organize. There's a cost behind it because carton cups cost more expensive than the plastic cups. Federations like us, we are depending very much on government support. Swiss Olympic in this case is managing, I would say, that money that is generated at Swiss Olympic, that 100 million is divided over all these sports federations. And if it wasn't for the government, if it wasn't for the Swiss Lotto organization, sports would not exist in Switzerland. Yeah, and in many countries it would not exist properly. So
What you're saying is very interesting to me because I come from an Eastern country, yeah? And in our heads, if the state subsidizes sports, it works. If it doesn't, there would not be any sports. But also we believe that, okay, on the West side, you have way more commercial type of activities. Let's say Mercedes sponsoring the football association, yes, and that basically fills the budgets in order for them to function. But as you were saying, it's just a fraction, and the rest of it needs to be subsidy from governments.
Yes, it's either governments, and I give you my model, for example, and that is that we have that as maybe particularity, but there's other sports that have similar ones, and other ones do not have that possibility. But we also have a license for players to play tournaments or to play competition. So that's also generating a certain amount of money. And to give you that little bit in relation, that license, I have a nearly 2 million budget, and that license business plus my sponsor business is probably around 900,000. I'm rounding it up now. I mean, don't take me left or right on 20%. And the other part is, so I would nearly say I'm more than half subsidized by government, Swiss Lotto, government money, I would say. And otherwise, we wouldn't be able to survive properly. I mean, it would be a disaster if we had to organize it, or better to say, it would be jeopardizing a lot of, I would say, development possibilities, but also support possibilities that we have today for, is it for our athletes, is it for the development of coaches, is it for the so it's really having an important matter. It's an important part of our system in Switzerland, but sorry to say it, in many European countries.
The sustainability aspect, I speak a lot to federations, and what is becoming definitely a topic is that the commercial sponsors are looking for the engaged, socially engaged, environmentally engaged platforms that where sport is actually, I think, maybe the number one which can provide that, because it has to do with activity, it has the social aspect, it has the nature aspect, and then comes the federation itself. Is the federation itself conducting its work in a sustainable way? And can it provide me with further benefits as a sponsor? If I engage with you, will you be able to measure and provide me with impact analysis to my sponsorship activities that I can then include into my actual ESG reporting as a corporate?
Yeah. And federations like ours or in our size, and there's many in our size, it's limited. It's very limited. And it's not that we can't fulfill the requirements you just mentioned. I'm not just sure if it's quantifying for a company to have that returned immediately and that they can use it in their ESG reporting. And therefore, I would say I think it's a limited impact. I mean, the higher you go up, the more that impact is possible, visible. I mean, like the badminton one. Badminton World Federation is sponsored by Total Energy. Total Energy.
Yeah.
Now you can see it. So it's and why? Total obviously wants to move into another form of energy. It comes from a petrochemical part, and they're still active in this because obviously here again, overnight you can't change it. But they try to make the positive impact, and they see that the sport of badminton has a massive impact in Southeast Asia. And therefore, the World Federation, who is itself located in Kuala Lumpur, and then you see those kind of situations where you can see that these countries or these companies can create an impact and are using certain sport activities. The same goes for FIFA with their brands. The same goes for, but if a small national federation can have that impact, it's not easy. It's not easy. And we have, of course, this clear disadvantage in Switzerland that what is 8.5 million inhabitants for a sponsor or for a brand? I mean, it's nothing.
Well, it's a
market. I mean, but
market.
Oh, well, it's a market, but I mean, it's still a very small market. I mean, and sorry to say it, we're more influenced sometimes by the outside. I mean, with all due respect, our football league. Yeah. Okay. Last time I was looking the national team. Nobody, I repeat, nobody was playing in Switzerland.
Okay.
Yeah. That's our national football team. Nobody played in Switzerland. All play for foreign teams and foreign clubs, which is logic because we don't have and we can't reach the level of competing. We do not have the money. We do not have the impact because of sponsorship and that we can create. I mean, and so we're missing a lot of components to be able to get out of that, I would say, circle of financing, and because, sorry, a good football player needs a good salary, and that's nowadays significant money. Yeah. So how to do that if I don't even have the impact that I can reach a lot of people and to make a difference? Either I become an international name, and then I go far over the borders, and then you have athletes like Roger Federer or Wawrinka, who are tennis players who became global heroes. But if you don't have that, and football players can only get there through their clubs where they play, and unfortunately, I do not know a lot of Swiss players who really went up to that, I would say, unique level. But there's a few good players, by the way, that are really working hard on that profile and already made a good dime for themselves. But yeah.
Before we close up this section, there is one topic where I had the privilege to discuss with you off record, and that was the alarming level of growth in immobility amongst people. And I think today we are talking about 1.8 billion people worldwide who are considered inactive. And that's, again, a point where I think well, I don't know whether it's called responsibility, but focus can be of federations and brands to go for those people and try to make them move. I'm not particularly talking now about Swiss badminton, but federations and sporting federations and beyond.
Well, and I'm coming back to the discussion we had in the early part, which was related to the sporting goods industry, because obviously we have a similar interest. The more people are moving, they're most likely going into a activity, if this is a sport or if this is walking or any form of activities, for which in the end they need a sporting goods product, or in the end they need to be associated to a club or association because they want to practice a particular sport of activity. And you said something 1.8 billion inactive, and here we come to the definition. Inactive means inactive. How many people are not moving enough? How many people are not, I mean, I'll be very honest also, when I stopped working, I actually, until that moment, I thought I was robbing myself of activities. Why? Because I didn't do anything, because I was tired. I worked my butts off. I worked very hard, long hours. And obviously that's what I wanted also. But I mean, what I missed out on is that I neglected my physical activities. Yeah. I actually felt also I'm not treating myself properly. I should have had a much better balance, work-life balance, which I didn't have. I mean, I had a work balance, but the life balance, I should have had much more time for myself to find for physical activity or sports. Now, my travel itineraries and my did not allow me to do that. I mean, and maybe it was my fault, and maybe we should have done something different, and maybe, but I think many people are falling in that trap, I would say, and it's not an excuse, but maybe it's something where also companies can start thinking about. And I'm not talking about sporting good or sports federations. I'm talking about companies in general. How can you give your people time to do physical activities? How can you make sure? Because let's be very honest, and that's the name of the exercise. Once people are more active, it is shown and proven that they are most likely less sick, less absence of work. They are more alert. They have a brain that works better and easier. They and they have, well, if it's younger people, they have probably better notes in school, etc., etc. Not to talk about the impact that illness or have on insurance companies, where at the moment, obviously, if I take our own country, Switzerland, I mean, the only way is up of my insurance premiums that I have to pay every month, and which is actually the wrong way.
I just, and you brought up the insurance example. My previous podcast was with Nationale Nederlanden, and
Okay.
they are a Dutch health and life insurer, and my interview partner told me that they've seen in Italy 50% of the society is inactive. If you take 10% and you get 10% to move 2.5 hours per week, it would create a savings on the healthcare industry of 223 million euros.
Yeah.
That's the 10% of the 50%.
Yeah, exactly.
And so this is why I think that also federations who stand for sport and of course together with brands, first of all, it's a huge market for both of them. It's in their interest to get these people involved in one sport or the other. And of course, they do something good as well and create positive impact.
Yeah.
And coming to the future outlook, with your experience across the industry, what do you see as the next big trends in corporate responsibility within sports?
I think the biggest trend that we will see is that it becomes standard to be integrated in our activities and not anymore an add-on or a supplement or
I love that.
or a supplement or an extra cost or whatever. It is not questionable. It is standard. And I think that is where the trend is going or has to go. And this will happen. It takes another 10, 15 years to get there. It needs also a little bit of generation shift. We're still living with a generation that is not born in these thought projects, but we have to, like I said it before, we have to do this in a sustainable manner, also financially. So it's, but that's what I expect. So for me, that's as simple as that. So if you ask me what is the trend, that is definitely the next trend of where it's going.
If you could implement one major change, money no object, in the sporting goods industry or the way federations operate, what would that be?
Okay, it's I think before we were on 1 million, then we went to 1 billion question, and this is the 10 billion question, I guess. But no, I think there's a lot of activities in a positive way already going on, and I'm not sure, and that is still in the delivery phase, I would say, and that is the global inactivity, to fight the global inactivity, and this goes to promotion of physical activity. And if you would see then between the sports federation or my Swiss badminton, but also beyond European and global, and the same goes for the sporting goods industry. This is an activity that can only be done by collaborating. The sporting goods industry has taken a lead in this initiative together with the WHO already, but also the IOC is involved in this whole matter. And this is what I would see as a upcoming project, or better to say, I hope in the success of the project, because the project is already launched and the whole activities are in motion. But as you understand, if you do this globally, it takes a while before the engine is running. But that's for me, I would say, the need of impact that we need to have because of physical activity. Let's put it differently. If we do not become physically active again, we will bring ourselves into serious challenges, troubles. Is it on a cost perspective? It is on a health perspective. And I think therefore that I would like to see as one of the most important impacts. That said, I would like to give you then also a hint to go deeper into this subject for your next podcast.
Thank you. I take that.
And I would like to support you and advise you to take a long conversation with my successor, Emma Zwiebler, who can, in this particular case, give you, I would say, the follow-up on our discussion for today, and to talk about the impact of physical activity. She has all the numbers and she has all the partners in her head that could give you an important message on where this is going. But that I would see as a delivery that we need to do combinedly with all, if it's the sports federation, but also the food and beverage industry, the pharmaceutical industry, everybody basically has to contribute to this.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Rob, for those answers. And as every athlete, we need a bit of a cool down, right? So just a few cool down questions. You have had a long and impressive career in sports. What has been the most memorable or inspiring project you have been part of?
Oh, oh, wow. Okay. Several, I would say. Several. I mean, like I said, I mean, I've had the luck to work for the IOC, which is, of course, much different organizations than Intersport, which is a retail organization, and afterwards the Global Industry Federation. So I would say three different types of organizations with, I would say, three different.
Your favorite one?
Well, I really have several, I would say, cool experiences. And in the end, I would nearly say I've have out of this a lot of friends, but my experience that I had, and that was the luck, was the ability to meet people that I only know from television or newspapers, where you could learn a lot of new informations, and I had the privilege to have insights on a global level what's going on, which made my judgment for certain things completely revised to what I would previously have had. And for me, that has made a impact on me, on my life, but I thought also on my ways, how I see things. And for me, that in general has contributed, if this was at Intersport, if this was at the World Federation, or if this was at the Olympic Committee, has contributed to what I am today. I think a person of the world, understanding different cultures, and I'm very privileged that I've been able to experience this, because there's not many people who have had this experience. And for me, that is therefore not one experience, but I mean, to be able to learn during your life phase different cultures, different ways of people thinking, different ways how people behave, why do they reason like this and why not the other way around. And I think that is, I'm very pleased and privileged that I have had that chance to go through that. So I do not know if there's one element that I can pick out there.
If you had to give one piece of advice to sports leaders trying to integrate impact-driven projects into their organizations, what would it be?
A bold one would be, only idiots never change their minds.
Yes, fair enough.
It's a bold one, because I've seen so many federations, they're stuck in their way of thinking, in their way of working, and they're so rigid in that, where I would say, hey guys, think out of the box, do things that are not normal, and you be more successful.
Absolutely.
And I think that's some things where I'm just saying this boldly, but it is, we have a lot of opportunities, and I think that opportunity, or that need sometimes to think out of the box, and you can't change the sport completely, let's be very frank, but that helps sometimes to open up some visions. Yes.
And the final question. At the Power of Play, we believe that sport has the ability really to transform lives. We have seen it through multiple initiatives, one of my favorite being the Homeless World Cup. What does the phrase, the power of play, mean to you?
And I think we said it before, we also use the word sport for good. I mean, and you could also say the power of play, obviously, as you use it as your slogan, could have a similar message, where we do have an impact, that the sport has an impact, an athlete has an impact. And interestingly enough, it has a positive impact. I mean, there's seldomly a person who has identified sport as a negative. And there is seldomly situations where it's been seen as a negative. I mean, and therefore I would say something that brings that positiveness with it. I think that's actually what goes with the power of play, the power of sport for good, and we're trying to see the world as a positive, and that is what sport is all about.
Amazing. Robbert, thank you very much for being with us. And that's a wrap on today's episode of The Power of Play. We hope you feel inspired by the incredible ways sport is shaping lives. If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow us, like, share, and comment on our content. And remember, the game does not end when the whistle blows. The real impact happens beyond the field. Keep playing, keep pushing, and keep making a difference. And see you next time on the next episode of The Power of Play. Thank you.